A note to the listeners, episode 16 contains some explicit language and mature content. Lindsay and I, by Nathan Allen Long. Lindsay and I sit on her bed with the door closed, talking about pubic hair. We're wondering, does everyone's match the color on their heads? Is it always curly? This is girl talk, Angie, Lindsay says, and I'm excited. I tell her that when I was young, I'm 11 now, I thought it was public hair. She says I'm probably dyslexic. I don't want to ask her what that means, but I can tell from her voice that it's what she calls a diagnosis, not meant to be an insult. Maybe it means I'm simple-minded. I'm not sure. She straightens out the wrinkles on her bedspread. It's sea green and heavy like my parents' comforter at home. It makes her room feel very adult. I still love when Mom makes my bed with Powerpuff Girl sheets. Lindsay says she once saw her brother's pubic hair when he was sleeping on the couch. His pants had twisted down. She said it was like a scribble pouring down his belly and pooling up above his belt buckle. I picture it, then I blink my eyes trying to erase it. I tell her I don't think my brother, who is younger than me, has any hair there yet. But I've never looked. Lindsay's 15 months older than me, 2 grades ahead. We don't see each other in school, but we hang out on the bus and play in the afternoons. We only live 3 blocks apart. Lindsay pats the bed twice, inviting me to sit closer to her. Angie, she says, I've got a secret. I sit down beside her and wait. She gathers up the silence for suspense, then pointing to her front teeth, she says, I once found a pubic hair between my teeth. That's gross. I lean away, like it were still there. You want to know the gross part? She says, and then whispers it to me before I can say no. It was someone else's hair. How do you know? Different color. I shake my head and wonder how we became friends. Lindsay says she started growing pubic hair the day she turned 10. Like it was her decision. And you know what? She says, I had hairs under my arms before I got them down there. She pauses, waiting for me to say something. I'm tired of this talk, but I feel like I have to tell her something. I started a few months ago, I say, but there's not much. I feel like I've said too much, but Lindsay just stares at me, wanting more. I don't mind, I say, finally turning away. I don't want to have to shave. I bet it hurts. I don't shave mine, Lindsay says. She tugs the lower part of her sleeve down toward her chest and shows me her pit. See? I don't see anything at first. Then I see them, thin hairs like corn silk, laying against her skin all in one direction, like water washed over them, pressing them down. Lindsay keeps her arm raised, her sleeve pulled down. Huh, I say after a moment. I want to change the subject. I've got more under my other arm, she says, but doesn't show me. I stare at a wrinkle in the fabric of her bedspread, not wanting to look up. After a while, Lindsay whispers, Don't worry. You'll get more soon. She says this even though I don't want them. And you'll get breasts, she says. Another diagnosis. She puts her hand on my shoulder like she's trying to comfort me, but my face feels hot. Then she lifts her shirt and bra and says, Do you want to feel mine? Her breasts are small, her nipples pale pink, a color I've never seen before. I know now we are doing something wrong, and I can hardly breathe. I say, Why? Just because, she says, holding up her shirt like an offering and a dare, like a threat. Her door is closed. No one is home. I look out her window past the driveway to the road. There are no cars in sight. I'm no longer sure what I want, but I know she'll say I'm scared if I don't touch her. And I can't think of a good reason not to, other than I'm not sure it's right. But I figure if anyone ever finds out, I'll say it was her idea. It was. I cup my hands and put them on her chest. Her skin is warm and too soft. I feel a shock in my arms. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, so I concentrate on holding my hands still until my palms begin to sweat. I really don't want to do this, and I pull away. Lindsay pulls down her shirt and says it straight. I think you're a lesbian, she says. Her final diagnosis. Yeah, I say. It's a word I've never used, but I'm pretty sure that I know what it means. It's okay, she says, patting my leg. We're still friends. I don't think I am one, I say, trying to sound like I don't care either way. We sit there on her green bedspread, quiet for a long time. My stomach starts to feel like a knot. Here, Lindsay says, brushing hair away from my face. She reaches up and grabs my chin, bringing my lips to hers. It's so sudden, and I don't know what to do. Her mouth feels too warm and too cold, and more slippery than I could have imagined. I think of the raw eel I saw a woman eat in a movie once on late-night TV. Then I think of that pubic hair Lindsay said she found between her teeth. I want to pull away, but she's still holding my chin. I get scared, then mad, and pull my head away. We both sit leaning away from each other. The things I do for you, she says, shaking her head like she's saying, You're so ungrateful. I'm sorry, I say, though everything is different now. I don't know if it's the kiss or the way she said the words so fast, but I can tell now that she's the one who's really scared. But I'm not exactly sure why. Lindsay smiles and leans back toward me. It's okay, she says. You're young. This would be a diagnosis, too, if she wasn't just trying to hurt me. I think of all the things I could say to get her back, but I don't say anything. I know what it's like to be scared. And I do like her, in my own way. Hello there, everyone. This is No Extra Words, the Flash Fiction Podcast. My name is Chris Baker-Dersch. I'm your producer and editor. I feel like I do these commentaries every week between stories, and I feel like I've been alternating between talking and rambling endlessly and saying almost nothing at all. So if I'm looking at my calendar, this is apparently my week to ramble, which I'm going to try really hard not to do. I'm not feeling totally inspired tonight to talk your ear off, so I'm really going to just try to give you a few words and then send you back to the stories. Coming up next is Stephen Bailey's The Deke. The title of episode 16 is When Did I Say You Could? Kind of playing with that idea of consent, which is far from absolute, isn't it? I spent last weekend at a writers' conference, which is always kind of fun, and it was one of those conferences where out of every session I got something useful, which is pretty awesome. If you are in any way involved with the Write on the Sound Writers' Conference in Edmonds, Washington, thank you so much. And I registered late, so I got whatever sessions were open. So I got to be in the section of flash fiction, which was fun. And I got to be on a session of writing a memoir, which I don't think I'll ever do. And I got to be in on a session of middle grade versus young adult novels. Where does your particular novel fit was the question being asked, which was sort of fun because I'm a former teen and children's librarian. And so it was interesting to see what someone else's perspective on that question might be. And I come to that because Nathan Allen Long's story is not a novel, obviously, but it does really play with that moment where middle grade becomes YA. And for those of you not versed in that world, middle grade is that 8 to 10-year-old, 8 to 11-year-old kid who's struggling with the who am I and why are they making fun of me on the playground, and it's that kind of a story. YA is where you suddenly get dunked in the bath of hormones and it turns into, oh, holy cow, what just happened? And what in the world is going on with everyone else? And of course, everyone else must be crazy. And I think Nathan Allen Long's story perfectly captures that moment right at the cusp of adolescence where suddenly everything goes completely lunatic nuts. Coming up next is The Deke by Stephen Bailey, which is another... It's sort of a stereotype of adolescence, things that happen to a lot of us with perhaps his own spin on it, which I thought was really interesting. I really love it when I can feel the setting of a story and I can place myself exactly where it is happening. It's not always necessary, especially in flash fiction, to really set the stage, but when it can be done well, and I think you heard that last week in, I think it was Smooth Operator, the story that happened in New Orleans, it just felt New Orleans. And this story, The Deke, coming up really puts me in a place and in a time, which I think is really cool. Coming up next week on No Extra Words, we have 2 more stories that may get slightly scandalous. I promise not too much. And before the month is over, we are going to squeeze 4 stories into an episode. I'm figuring out how to record that as we speak. So lots of things ahead. Please visit us, noextrawords.wordpress.com. Let us know what you think, and we will see you next week. Enjoy the rest of the show. The Deke by Stephen Bailey. After dinner, I get a call from my friend Kashevsky. I've got to come down and meet him outside right away. He won't say why, so I tell my parents I'm going to the library to research the natural resources of Bulgaria, and he's waiting for me on the sidewalk in a brand new black leather jacket. My father gave in and got it for my birthday. I don't have the heart to tell him how ridiculous he looks. He'd be more at home in a clown suit, he's so generally lopsided. All the same, he's got to take the jacket on a spin through the neighborhood. And, on a deserted block, wouldn't you know, we cross paths with a couple of hoods named McCracken and Goff. Well, look at you. McCracken, who with his red hair and freckles reminds me of a deranged howdy-doody, runs a paw over Kashevsky's sleek sleeve. Nice. Very nice. Only when did I say you could wear it? Stand at attention. Suck that chin in. Koshevsky pretends to get into the spirit of the joke, but he can't conceal his trembling as McCracken yanks down every one of the jacket's 11 zippers and relieves him of his change and a pack of Luckies. Meanwhile, Goff, a file cabinet on 2 legs, is giving me the once-over. True, the Yankee jacket I'm wearing isn't offensive enough, but I've combed what we call a deke forward onto my forehead, and this, as it happens, is Goff's trademark. I see you in school like that tomorrow, I'll kick the shit out of you. In his younger days, my father was in the Golden Gloves, and Koshevsky thinks I'd better ask him for a lesson as soon as I get home. I'm too proud to disturb the old man's snooze in front of the TV, though, and at bedtime, when I weaken and appeal to my kid brother for sympathy, he falls asleep during my pitch. The only reason I fall asleep myself is I'm determined to stay awake. My idea is to make the night last, but in what seems like 5 minutes, gray light is leaking in around the window shade, and my mother is shaking me by the shoulder. "You combed it back," my brother says when I come out of the bathroom. I indignantly deny it and yank the deke downward. Koshevsky, in a tame brown surcoat, falls in beside me as I pass his building. His father is taking the motorcycle jacket back and has agreed to get him a reel-to-reel tape recorder with the refund. In the meantime, he's been reading up on judo. You grab his wrist like this, see, and then you kick his ankle out from under him. They say it works every time. It's not till lunch that Goff catches up to me. I'm eating my hot turkey sandwich with my head bent low over my plate, and out of nowhere he drops into the place opposite me. "You didn't listen." All around me in the lunchroom, the yammer of voices continues, and I sit there staring at him with a forkful of mashed potatoes suspended halfway to my mouth. "After school, I'll be waiting for you by the steps." I'll spare you the details of the next few hours, in which, if you discount my several trips to the toilet, the only thing of interest that happened was that a kid I didn't know stopped me in the hall between classes and offered to lend me a zip gun. I thanked him and declined. At 3 o'clock, when I came down the steps, at the bottom of them McCracken was telling a circle of his cronies about the ballerina who danced first on one leg and then on the other. Goff was still guffawing at how between the 2 of them she earned her living, when he strolled up to me and pointed to my right. Naturally, I obliged him by turning to see what he was pointing at, and he punched me in the side of the head. He'd have gone on and kept his promise to kick the shit out of me if a burly gym teacher hadn't grabbed him from behind just when he had me down on the sidewalk. After that, he never bothered me again. In the halls and in the lunchroom, he'd pass me without a glance, and once I even thought I saw him warn some punk with a notion away. Over the decades, I forgot his existence and encountered nothing to remind me of it, till in a cafeteria by the subway one night I saw him sitting by himself over a cup of coffee. Actually, the flabby character at the table didn't look the first thing like a file cabinet, but it was Goff, I'd have bet on it. But I couldn't have said what made me so sure. He had a good laugh when I approached and explained how I knew him. "Yeah, those were the days. My father used to wail on me all the time, and a lot of guys paid for it." He credited the military with straightening him out, that and his marriage to a good woman who'd saved him from a penchant for beer. Now he was newly retired from driving a school bus, and his greatest pleasure, apart from babysitting his grandkids, was dancing with his wife to their collection of vintage 45s. "You should come over sometime. We've got the Platters, the McFatters, the Osgood Schlatters, the Fleiswaters." As I was leaving the cafeteria, I looked back and suddenly realized how I'd recognized him. It was all gray now, but he still had his deke.